You ever meet someone who makes you feel like you're constantly chasing clarity? One moment they're in, the next they vanish. It's not that they're bad people, it's that they've built emotional walls so high, even they can't see over them. And that's what we're diving into today: 7 questions that avoidants can't answer, not because they're incapable, but because answering them would mean facing something real. 1. What do you actually want from me? When you ask this, you'll hear silence or vague things like "I don't know. Let's just see where this goes." But here's the truth: if they wanted to build with you, they'd be clear. Ambiguity is a defense, a shield, because clear wants come with clear responsibility. 2. Why do you pull away when things get close? They'll say, "I just need space." But the pattern reveals the truth. Closeness feels dangerous to someone who was never taught safety and love, so they sabotage it before it feels like a loss. 3. Can you be vulnerable with me? Avoidants crave love, but vulnerability terrifies them. Opening up feels like giving up control. They'll joke, deflect, or intellectualize, but real connection lives in the spaces they avoid. 4. Do you even see how this hurts me? This one stings because it forces them to see beyond their bubble, to feel the consequences of their detachment, and that's uncomfortable, so they downplay your emotions. You're overreacting, you're too sensitive, but no, you're just human and aware. 5. Why do you only show up when I pull away? The push-pull game. Avoidants need space when you get close, but they chase when you finally walk. Why? Because distance activates their fear of abandonment. Closeness activates their fear of engulfment. They're caught in a loop they don't even see. 6. What are you afraid of? This question hits home. They won't admit it, but they're terrified of being known, of being needed, of needing you, because that would mean they're no longer in control. 7. Are you capable of real intimacy? Not sex, not flirtation, but intimacy, truth, partnership. It's a confronting question, and one they often can't answer honestly, because it forces a mirror in front of them, and the reflection, it's not always pretty. Let me be clear. Avoidants aren't broken, but you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be seen. Love without emotional availability is a transaction of confusion, and your time, your love, your energy, they deserve reciprocity. You don't need someone who vanishes at the first sign of depth. You need someone who leans in, not away, when love gets real. If they can't answer these 7 questions, then maybe the real question is, why are you still asking them? Avoidants struggle with emotional clarity and consistency, not because they don't feel deeply, but because feeling deeply scares them. They were never taught how to sit with uncomfortable emotions, so instead they bury them. They retreat into silence, into logic, into distractions that keep them safe from vulnerability. When you ask them how they feel, you'll rarely get a straight answer, not because they're trying to hurt you, but because answering that question would mean confronting something they've spent years avoiding. They'll say things like, "I don't know," or "It's not that serious," or even worse, they'll turn the question back on you. They operate in gray zones, vague intentions, unclear communication, hot and cold behavior. Because clarity feels like a commitment, and commitment feels like danger. To an avoidant, emotional consistency isn't familiar. In fact, stability often feels boring or suspicious, so they chase intensity instead. But when things become real, when someone gets close, they panic. They distance themselves, physically or emotionally. They become unavailable, inconsistent, or detached, not because they've stopped caring, but because caring too much makes them feel out of control. Control is everything to them. They protect their independence like a shield, because somewhere along the way, they learned that needing someone leads to pain, so they build walls, not to keep you out, but to keep themselves from getting hurt. They long for connection, but the moment connection feels real, they disappear. They're masters of self-preservation, but terrible at co-regulation. They'll give you mixed signals not because they enjoy the confusion, but because they're confused within themselves. One part of them wants closeness, the other part runs from it. They can love you and still leave you. They can miss you and still avoid you. It's not that their feelings aren't real, it's that their fear is stronger than their desire. And so, the cycle continues. They pull away to feel safe. They come close when they fear losing you, but they never stay long enough to build something secure, because safety in love is unfamiliar, and what's unfamiliar feels threatening. So instead of consistency, you get chaos. Instead of depth, you get confusion. And instead of growth, you get stuck in limbo, waiting for answers they may never give. They often use vagueness to avoid accountability. Not because they're inherently manipulative, but because clarity forces them to be seen, and being seen means taking emotional responsibility. So instead of saying what they want, they keep it blurry. They'll tell you they're just figuring things out. They'll say, "Let's not label this yet," or "I'm not sure what I'm ready for." But underneath that foggy language is a deep discomfort with commitment, because commitment invites expectations, and expectations feel like pressure, so they speak in riddles. They give you just enough to keep you hoping, but not enough to feel secure. They don't define the relationship. They don't clarify their intentions, and if you ask too many questions, they'll say you're moving too fast. They'll shift the narrative, make it about your neediness, when really, it's their avoidance being exposed. Vagueness becomes a shield they hide behind, because when everything is unclear, nothing is their fault. If things go wrong, they can say, "I never promised anything." If you get hurt, they can say, "I thought we were just having fun." It's a convenient escape route, but it leaves you holding all the emotional weight. You're the one wondering where you stand. You're the one replaying conversations, trying to decode mixed messages. You're the one hoping they'll finally be honest. But they rarely are, not because they don't care, but because honesty would mean admitting they're not ready to show up. It would mean confronting their own fears, and that's something they've spent years avoiding. So instead, they hover in a space of almost committed, almost open, almost honest, but almost isn't love, and vagueness isn't kindness. It's a way to delay the truth, to keep their options open, to stay emotionally distant while appearing emotionally involved. They want the benefits of connection without the cost of commitment, and so they keep things just unclear enough, not enough to push you away, but never enough to truly let you in. And the longer you stay in that fog, the more it erodes your self-worth. You start accepting crumbs as if they're a full meal. You start calling inconsistency mystery. You start confusing avoidance with emotional depth. But deep love isn't vague. It's clear, it's steady, it's accountable, and when someone avoids clarity, they're not protecting your heart, they're protecting their comfort at your expense. Intimacy triggers fear, not comfort, in avoidance. Not because they don't want closeness, but because closeness feels like danger. It reminds them of moments when trust was broken, when love came with strings, when being vulnerable led to pain, abandonment, or rejection. So now, even when someone offers love with honesty and warmth, it doesn't feel safe. It feels overwhelming, too intense, too much. Their nervous system sees intimacy as a threat, not a home, so they retreat. They emotionally withdraw. They disconnect right when things begin to feel real. They might change the subject when emotions surface, or suddenly become busy when the relationship starts to deepen. It's not because they've stopped caring. It's because caring too much feels like losing control. They're used to managing relationships on their own terms, on their own timeline, at a safe distance, but intimacy doesn't work that way. It requires presence. It requires being seen, and being seen means showing the parts of themselves they've tried so hard to hide, the fear, the wounds, the insecurities. For an avoidant, that's terrifying, because underneath their calm or distant exterior is often a deep fear of inadequacy. They believe if someone gets too close, they'll see the cracks, and if they see the cracks, they'll leave, so they push people away before that can happen, sometimes with silence, sometimes with criticism, sometimes with passive-aggressive distance. It's a preemptive defense, better to pull away now than to be hurt later. But what they don't realize is that this pattern creates the very thing they fear: disconnection. They want love, they just don't trust it. They crave intimacy, but they don't believe it will last. They fear needing someone, because needing someone once led to pain, so they keep their walls high, their heart guarded, and their feelings locked behind a door even they rarely open. When someone offers them closeness, their first instinct isn't gratitude, It's suspicion. What do they want? Will they hurt me? Will they leave like the others? And that fear becomes louder than the love in front of them, so they pull away, not because they don't feel something, but because feeling something makes them vulnerable, and to an avoidant, vulnerability feels like risk, not connection. So they stay distant, even when their heart wants to be close, even when someone is willing to love them patiently, because the fear feels safer than the fall. Vulnerability feels like weakness to them, so they avoid it. They've been taught, either by life or experience, that showing emotion is dangerous, that opening up invites pain, not comfort, so they keep things surface level. They'll talk about work, ideas, plans, anything but feelings. Because feelings mean exposure, and exposure makes them feel unsafe. They've built their identity around control, around independence, around not needing anyone, and vulnerability threatens all of that. It strips away the armor, it makes them human, it makes them real, and that level of honesty terrifies them, because they fear what you'll do with it. Will you use it against them? Will you walk away? Will you see them differently once you know what's behind the mask? So instead, they deflect, they laugh it off, they change the subject, or they give you a version of the truth that feels safe and edited. They might say, "I'm fine," when they are not, or "it's no big deal," when it's tearing them up inside, but deep down they want to be known. They just don't believe it's safe to be known, because in their world, vulnerability equals rejection. They learned early on that the more open they were, the more it hurt, so they stopped opening up. Now they see emotional distance as strength. They see self-protection as intelligence. They believe staying guarded is how you survive. But survival isn't the same as living, and emotional walls may keep pain out, but they also keep love out. Still, they hold on to the walls because they don't want to risk being seen and then left. They'd rather be misunderstood than hurt. They'd rather be distant than disappointed. They'd rather keep you guessing than risk showing their truth, and in doing so, they rob themselves of connection, of closeness, of real intimacy, because love, real love, requires openness, it requires risk, it requires the courage to say, "Here I am, flaws and all." But to them, that's terrifying. It feels like giving away power. Like surrendering control, so they choose silence over sharing, guardedness over truth, distance over depth, not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much, and they've never learned how to sit with those feelings. So they bury them behind smiles, behind silence, behind sarcasm or strength, and they call it being private or strong or independent. But deep down, it's fear, fear of being hurt again, fear of not being enough, fear of being fully seen and then fully rejected. They may invalidate your emotions to protect their detachment, not because your feelings are wrong, but because acknowledging them would force them to face their own. And that's something they're not ready to do. So instead of listening, they deflect. They minimize what you're going through. They tell you you're overreacting. They say you're being too sensitive, or they pretend not to understand what you're asking for. It's not that they don't hear you, they just don't want to feel responsible for your pain, because responsibility feels like pressure, and pressure feels like danger, so they create distance with dismissal. They'll twist the narrative to make it seem like you're the problem, that your needs are too much, that your hurt is inconvenient, that your expectations are unfair. They do this not to attack you, but to defend themselves. They don't want to look in the mirror. They don't want to admit that their behavior affects someone else, so they detach, and that detachment makes them blind to your emotional world. They might roll their eyes when you express how you feel. They might get quiet, withdraw, or get defensive, because to them, emotions feel like conflict, and conflict feels like loss of control, so they shut it down before it goes any further. They might say, "Why are you making a big deal out of this?" Or, "I don't see the issue." But the issue isn't about logic, it's about feeling, and avoidants struggle to live in that space. They prefer distance to depth. They prefer certainty over emotion. And when you bring feelings into the picture, they feel threatened. So they protect their emotional safety by invalidating yours, not because they want to hurt you, but because it's the only way they know how to stay safe. They think, if I don't acknowledge it, maybe it'll go away. But your pain doesn't go away. It grows in silence, it deepens in dismissal, and eventually it makes you question yourself. You start wondering if maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe you do expect too much, but the truth is you're just trying to connect. You're just asking to be heard, to be understood, to feel seen by someone who matters to you. But when someone is emotionally avoidant, your needs become a mirror they don't want to look into, so they turn away. They push the mirror back, they make your emotions the problem rather than facing the discomfort of their own avoidance, and in doing so, they protect their detachment at the cost of your emotional safety. So here's what you need to remember. Your emotions are not too much. Your need for clarity, for connection, for consistency, that's not asking for too much. That's asking for the bare minimum of a real, healthy connection. But someone who invalidates your feelings to protect their own comfort is not offering you love, they're offering you distance dressed as affection. You cannot shrink your emotions small enough to fit inside someone else's fear. You cannot build connection with someone who refuses to meet you halfway, so stop doubting your worth just because someone else struggles to meet it. You deserve someone who listens when you speak, who values your feelings as much as their own. Someone who doesn't run from vulnerability, but meets you in it, because real love isn't found in avoidance. It's found in the brave act of showing up, again and again, even when it's hard, and if they can't do that, then your silence isn't the loss, it's your freedom.